Hi, everyone here at the gallery, everyone at home. Welcome to this quarter's Creative Conversations. Today's topic is about developing your art writing. And what we're going to do is go over some concepts like visual literacy, then there'll be some activities for you to actually look at artwork. And hopefully by the end of our time together, we're able to draw some connections between looking at an artwork deeply and also developing our writing skills. But before I get into that, my name is Kara Shinda, and I'm Fellowship Director here at Vinci Art Alliance. I teach a course called Race, Identity, and Experience in American Art. And in that course, I use a variety of artworks and also concepts about visual literacy. And I thought it would be interesting. There was some interest from folks that have this type of workshop. So I do want to, preface that this is like very introductory, and hence the title "Develop." You're developing your art writing skills. There are other types of activities and workshops that can happen if folks are interested as well. All right. There are 3 questions that I'd like for us to consider, though, okay, as we go through some of these activities. Would you like to go to the next slide? And can everyone on Zoom hear okay? Yes. Okay. All right. So the first question, what is visual literacy? How might studying an artwork aid us in writing about art? And how might studying and writing about the properties of artworks influence our art practice? So those are 3 questions just to think about. What is visual literacy? How can studying a work of art help us to write? And how can studying and writing about art help in our own visual art practice? Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a very basic definition. It's from a website called Visual Literacy Today. There are other scholars who also have very different definitions of visual literacy. Quite simply, what it means is the ability to understand and communicate visual information. Okay, so visual information is broad, right? It can be both, it can relate to static and moving images. It can relate to symbols, the built environment, okay, anything that's visual. The other part is that if you do this or you have visual literacy through reading, writing, and creating. There's another, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So why is visual literacy important? Well, it helps build skills that we can apply to other areas of our life. There is a scholar named Amy Sherman who she was trained as a lawyer and then got into art. And she holds like several different types of classes about this. But she trains physicians sometimes. She trains folks in law enforcement, right? The idea behind it, I'm gonna read her words, is that we're talking about visual literacy and something called visual intelligence. Okay, so visual intelligence is the concept that we see more than we can process. And it's the idea of thinking about what we see, taking in the information, and considering how what we can see can aid us in living our lives more purposefully, and also doing our jobs more effectively. She has this concept called the pertinent negative. When she's working with physicians, for example, one of the things that you do as a physician is you have to learn how to diagnose, right? You're presented with all these possible scenarios as to what this disease or pathology is, right? But she talks about how sometimes it's important to look for what's not there. And so she teaches, like I said before, she makes physicians study artwork and to use different kind of art historical tools to do that. And there's a short video at the end of this presentation. I think this will be posted to the DVAA website, so you can actually take a look at her talking about this concept of visual intelligence. All right. Another important point is that to look deeply at an artwork is also to discover the foundations of creativity. I want to pause there. This is a quote from author Rick Rubin, who wrote The Creative Act. It was published last year. What might this mean? To look deeply is to discover the foundations of creativity. Any ideas? Here or at home? Oh, sorry, yes.
I think like in looking at something, the traces that were there, like there was
Right. 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 Anyone else?
I think when I think about art, I typically look at it from like physical creation rather than gravitate towards it or whatever. So like when you look at how something is made artistically,
Yeah.
you like really see intricate points of like I see the intentionality here, this part of it, right? And so through that you can kind of like get a little bit more, or at least like think about more of the lens of like what the artist was thinking as they were like creating the thing. Little details, little things. Yeah, I think purpose is a part of the foundation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
the creative act itself. So when you're seeing the place at the very last layer of the process of making everything, but when you dig down into the limits.
Right. All wonderful points. It makes me think there's a guy named, he's no longer living, Albert Gell. He was an anthropologist who wrote a lot about art. And one thing that stuck out to me that he said once is that art gives us the ability to see someone else's mind. Right? And that art in and of itself is not, it's a cultural object. And that there's deep connections that are made between the artist, the work of art, and the person who's experiencing it. But the first step, though, to get to that point, right, to even like look at an artwork and be like, oh, how did this artist create this? Or even to appreciate a work of art, you have to be able to look, right? Might go to the next slide. All right, so these are examples. These are, when I say visual literacy processes, I want to be clear that there are other types of processes or ways of thinking about the visual world. These are just some that I find helpful. Okay. So these three areas, I believe this might have been taken from Museum of Toledo. They have a visual literacy program there. But the first is describing. So think of describing as looking. Okay? You're doing what's called a visual inventory. You're simply looking at what's in front of you, what's there. You might notice colors. Okay. You might notice texture. You're not at this stage interpreting anything. You're just becoming aware of all the individual elements of the artwork. Okay. That's your experience. All right, the second is analyzing, seeing. Now there's that subtle difference, right, between looking and seeing. There's like a nuance there. And analyzing is thinking about You're assessing what you see, and you determine how the patterns or elements in artwork, you know, how does the composition or what's in that artwork, how do they all work together? So it's really a practice of core assessing what you see and determining how patterns or elements constitute the whole. All right, the next step is interpreting. And that is from looking to seeing to understanding what you see. That is, interpreting is you are getting meaning from the work, right? And yeah, so it's applying meaning to what you see. And I want to also mention that all of these are interchangeable. They build, there are activities that build upon one another. You don't have to necessarily do this in a linear way, right? But I find that these two things, these kind of processes are, helpful in looking at our artwork. So one of the first things you can do when you are, looking at our artwork, we're going to actually do some of these activities in a moment. Is first just look and see what it is, notice colors, shapes, etc. And then you can move on to analyze and interpretation. Now, before we're going to get, for those who are in Zoom, if you go to Vinci's website and find the current exhibitions that are up, you can see images of artwork. For those in the gallery, we're going to be doing our first activity here, Gallery 1, and then next in Gallery 2. Might go to the next slide. All right. So, for this first activity, does everyone have paper? Okay. I want you to select an artwork in Gallery. Okay. I know you're both here. Okay. So select an artwork in the gallery. Okay. And I want you to practice the process of describing. You're going to create a visual inventory, right? And a list of words is fine. Just what you see, you're not interpreting, you're not analyzing, you're just writing. When I say facts, does everyone understand what I mean? You're just writing about what's there. I want you to notice all the details, and you can use descriptive words. Okay, so do this for about 5 minutes. Select one artwork, and if you want, we can set a timer. It's probably helpful. Okay. And I encourage you to continue looking at the artwork as you're doing your visual inventory. The average amount of time that people spend in looking at an artwork in any type of setting, whether it be a gallery or a museum, is very short. Okay, almost like 30 seconds. So the longer you look, the more you look, the more details, right? You'll notice. So yeah, that's I'm going to do this activity too, right? Or no, I'll be here on hands. No, I look at art enough, but so yeah, let's take 5 minutes, select the artwork, and write everything you see. Got that, okay. All right, so that was 5 minutes. Yeah. Now we can go to the next slide. Now for this next part, before we go into analyzing, which is seeing, okay, I wanted to provide some concepts that you can use for analyzing. Some of you might already be familiar with what's called the elements of art, the basic properties of art, and the principles of design. Okay, there are a set of tools that artists and art historians use, right, to understand how an artwork is developed. Okay, so some examples are, for example, color, okay, light, shapes, dimensions or volume, some others, I'm trying to remember all of them, but time and motion or movement. Can you go to the next slide? I only have a couple of examples, but yes, the formal elements are here. So line, shape, light and dark, mass and volume, color, space, texture, and time and motion. Okay. Now, the term principles of design, that refers to a composition of a work of art, to its organization, right, and the arrangement of its elements. So the arrangement of all of these, okay? You can find a lot of resources online that give you some examples of these different elements. The Philadelphia Museum of Art has on their website, they have something that you can download, right? So when you're doing your analysis or seeing this process, you can use some of these concepts, right? You go to the next slide. All right. So I want you to go back to that artwork, okay, that you were looking at, and practice the process of analyzing. So assess what you see and determine how patterns or elements constitute the whole. Let me show you another example. I think I might have some examples of certain elements. Can you go to the next slide? For example, in this artwork, I don't know if you can see it with that there, but what are some shapes that you see? Triangles, right? Triangles, lots of triangles, circular lines. Yeah. Okay. So you don't have to be like an expert at any of these kind of elements of art. They're just tools to help you look at it and understand what you're looking at. Can you go to the next slide for me, please? All right, an example, if you can see this. All right, so this work by Hakusai right here. Example of time, motion, and movement. Okay. What in this artwork, right, is giving us the impression of movement? Mid art, yeah, the waves, mid art. There's like peaks on some of them, right? How about this one over here? Is that by Manway? I don't know if you can see that. What shapes do you see? How is movement? Yeah.
Well, it just doesn't look like it would sit flat very well. It looks like it would exist best in kind of.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like a base to it. It's not.
Right. There's not a base to it. Kind of like a spiral, kind of also evokes this idea of movement or motion. All right, so those are just two examples, right? So so go back to the artwork that you were looking at and take a look and notice the colors that are used, shapes, lines, patterns, texture, all of those things. And talk and see if you can piece together how all of those things together constitute the whole of art. So another 5 to 7 minutes. Two slides. Yeah. That is time, okay? So I wanted to take a moment for everyone to come back together. You're gonna get up in just a short, a couple of minutes again, but I just wanted to see hear your reflections on how the first two of these processes, how they're going for you. Are there any challenges? The insight that's been gleaned from doing either of these exercises? Yeah.
Sort of feel like I'm running out of things to notice.
Okay. Yeah.
Like,
5 to 7 minutes, you know, you can't run out of things to think about per se. Anyone else? Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I would get excited about that one. Yeah. All the lines are leading to the wallpaper. But it's like, that's me. This matters.
Right. No, so that's good. You start to ask questions, which leads to the process of interpretation. Okay, that's understanding what you see. Like, what do these lines, so here is the point where you start, you know, you're asking these questions like, what might the artist mean? Or what does it mean to me actually? Right? You can also think about memories. Does this artwork evoke memories for you? Right? Do the colors remind you of something? So that's what we'll do for the next part. So 5 to 7 minutes, once again, I want you to go back to that same artwork, right? And I want you to write a short description of your interpretation. Okay? Use the other two activities that you know, so use the descriptive words that you listed. Use, you know, the concepts that you wrote down for analyzing. You can use those to write your interpretation. Yes.
As the curator of this, also think about context, physical context, space, and historical context that it which is the now times too.
So yeah, so go back to that artwork and going over what Veronica said too. Think about the context. It's okay to look at the, you know, an artwork that's next to it, right? That can also give you some ideas. Hopefully one day we'll have like a you know, workshops on curating the curatorial process. That'll be fun. All right, so let's do this for about 5 to 7 minutes. It's fast. People that want to share. Let's talk about like what's your curatorial process? Your ideas about putting these works together. So finding it. Like, yeah, I don't know.
share. Have a folks.
All right, that's time. You're ready, you can come back to your seat and we'll start talking about interpretation and what interpretations you made as a result of studying the collective artwork. Okay, for those of you who are at home tuning in, what you can do, this next part, we're going to, for those who, I would like some volunteers to share their interpretations of the artwork. And all of us will go and look at the artwork while you're sharing your interpretation. For those of you at home, you can do the same, but in the chat. You can, if you have an image of the artwork that you selected, you can put that in the chat, or you can describe it, and then share your interpretation. The idea is basically to read each other's writing, okay? All right, so do I have anyone who is willing to share their interpretation of their artwork? We're all friends here, okay. So which artwork did you pick? Okay, so we're gonna go off camera for a minute. Right. Let's say, okay. I know.
Okay, you have. And space. Five.
Yes.
government is, was to be part of the pack, yeah. So. Alright, then. Share with you. The idea of the text of the art, what student. So I looked at it and sort of thought, oh, it's like a base. But segments, and that felt very disjointed. And like big trying to process and put together all these different facets of itself. I thought it's actually the exterior book out. Maybe not altogether a happy trying to put all these different pieces together and maybe feel very disparate and uncertain. And this painting are drawing on the right, which has a similar sort of color palette. It's very limited, and it also it's part of the base. Right. It seems kind of effective, like someone blending it. Painting on the left has a very muted color scheme, and it's called, I think, Portrait of a Man, Lost in Thought, and it looks very peaceful. So I thought it was interesting that this one was in the middle, 15 feet, which is one of those. It's good, but maybe also stuff. What about like movement? So when you're putting together and right, what was your thinking? These, this wall is all about. And I specifically made them lean in towards each other. So that there'd be conversations with them, so that they would be viewed as groups instead of single pieces. You don't want to touch it. With these ones, I'm wondering if Ron could just you have the squares and data color, like also the diagonal and the center one. Sort of also have the so all the shapes each other. Thank you for noticing that. This is so validating. Thank you. Yeah, it's what I'm thinking about is how studying artwork, but also releasing even with the space itself. Thank you for mentioning. Yes. All right. Does anyone else want to share which it is 1 o'clock, but we do not. All right, the next goes to talk about is exercise.
Are people still there? Okay. Okay. All right. So we talked about describing, analyzing, and interpretation. You had some time to study a work of art. We shared some interpretations of the work. All right. Now let's move on to another exercise that I find extremely helpful with writing about art. Okay. It involves looking as well, but also writing. And a couple of slides to keep going. Oh God, it's all good.
Oh
It's yeah. Should be able to like escape and then. Okay. All right, so alt text and writing about art. First of all, has everyone heard of the term alt text? Okay. All right, so the information that I'm going to be, which I drew upon for this is by a project called Alt Text as Poetry by these two artists, Bojana Kolayat and Shannon Finnegan, who do Shannon, I'm more familiar with Shannon Finnegan's work. They do a lot of installations related to access and ability, right? And so they did this project called Alt Text as Poetry. Okay, so some of the ideas I got from that. That's the link if you're interested in seeing it. You can even download the whole PDF. It's really fascinating, right? All right, can you move to the next slide? Okay. All right, so alt text is a contraction of alternative text. Okay. It's a written description of an image that is meant to convey the why. Oftentimes you see alt text, or well, only time you see alt text are web-based. They're web-based, or online, for example. Many programs now have an AI feature that allows you to just generate an alt text statement for an image. Okay. Now, alt text, when it comes to art, is slightly different, right? There are some things that you notice, or some other, you have to be mindful of some other things when you're writing about art. Okay? But I do this every semester, and I love this. I have students write alt text descriptions for works of art that we study in class, and I save them, and then I can use them in the future. I can actually use them as not just examples, but if I have something online, it's already there. All right, so alt text provides context for understanding visual content. Okay, it also enables us to hone descriptive writing skills. Okay, alt text is meant to be very short, concise yet descriptive. That can be very challenging for anyone to write. So you want to be descriptive yet concise and convey the meaning of the image. So, question: how would you describe this photograph in 1 or 2 sentences? This is Dorothea Lange's one of her most famous photographs, Migrant Mother. Okay. So how would you describe this photograph in 1 or 2 sentences? Yeah.
A grayscale image of a woman and 2 children. The woman looks off into the distance, and the children are faced away from her.
Okay. And I think that's a very good alt text description. Everyone misses this though. There are actually 3 children. I don't know if you can see that. There's the baby. Yeah. I did it too. The first time I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this image many times and didn't realize that there are 3 kids. Okay. All right. Go on to the next slide. Okay. All right. So the next thing that you're going to do is you can either stay in this gallery or you can go upstairs to do this. But what you're going to do is you're going to spend some time writing alt text for 3 different artworks. Okay. All right. And the reason why is like, again, it's a useful writing practice, right? So aim to have your alt text be descriptive and concise. 1 to 3 sentences, really one is actually preferred. Recognize that 3 different people could look at the same image and have a slightly different description. Um, People all the way to the end. Let me see. I do want to show you some examples of what I mean by this. Oh yeah, you can go past that. Okay. All right. So this is just an example. I have this question up here. It says, which alt text description is more objective? Because the idea is that you want to be, you're using, describing and analyzing basically when you're doing alt text, right? You're not actually doing any kind of interpretive meaning, right? Because these are meant for, first of all, alt text is meant for people who have low vision or blindness, right? And so you want it to be descriptive without being based upon your opinion so much. Okay. All right, so these are student examples, okay, of one person. So this is a drawing by Edward Hopper, yes. And it says, so the first one, a cartoonish illustration of a man going to work late at night. The second alt text description, a black and white drawing of a single figure walking down an empty street with buildings. Which of the two is more objective? And I mean objective meaning just describing what's in the actual photograph, not making value judgments. Yeah.
The second.
Right. Why is the second one more objective?
I feel like cartoonish is like a judgment,
Yeah.
and it also like creates its own narrative that the figure is going to work, the figure's a man, what time of day it is.
Right.
Or the other one just like describes and leaves it more open to like yourself to interpret.
Right. Yeah. We don't actually know where the figure is going, right? We don't know a lot about the figure's background, but looking at the visual elements alone, right? The second one is more descriptive. So that's this example. Okay. We go back to another slide. I don't remember which slide, but keep circling back. So we go to back to the alt text. Okay. Yep, right here. Okay. We'll just pause right here again. So the next activity is select 3 different artworks in either gallery 1 or gallery 2, and write alt text for those 3. Okay. And you have 15 minutes. Let me know if you need any support. Yeah, that's what I mean. I learned how to practice it so I can be more consistent. Filling out applications, for example. I'm sorry, go to the next slide. Getting up to that. Feel like they're done, they have enough time to write, create, okay. By extra time. One more person. The alt text description, sorry, I start with that. I was writing the alt text description. They're challenging, right? So I have 3 sentences. One is preferable, but it's not Would anyone like to share your alt text description? Yes.
Sure. A colorful painting of a grocery store on the street corner, surrounded by faded coloring and stories. I thought faded was implying some kind of, not like judgment about it, but like, I didn't know about it, right, but it felt relevant to it, but
Yes.
pieces of metal coming out of plaster at an angle, which connect, plateau, and then curve.
Okay. So people are sharing our alt text descriptions. Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know what to do about it.
Right, it's challenging. Yeah.
Pieces of falafel painted green in a 3x4 grid with a green sign underneath the trees. Let me know how I can support. That was probably the one I felt the most. Like, okay, that was objective, down the line, captured it.
I can envision it, like, actually, yeah.
The rest of it. Go for it.
Yeah. That's why we're practicing it. So, anyone else share their alt text? Yes.
So I struggled with some of
Okay.
and I tried to get it more precise, and I struggled so much. So I've done other photographs after this year.
Yeah, okay, so that was, yeah. Very descriptive though, but yeah, saying all that in one sentence, yeah, challenging. But, so, a way to possibly kind of make it more concise, what are like some, the main elements that were, so I'm assuming you did this one. It was like sharing, avoid, right? Also, it should have practiced with something that's striking is you're also this merge that. So yeah, I would, those main ideas. Will be a task. Is yeah. Would anyone else like to share their office?
Yes, yeah. So for, delicious when you other things. White text one, too large for the pizza reading.
Yeah.
But I like yours, I like actually yours better because it was more descriptive of what was actually, mine was very like utilitarian. There's Pete on the wall, here's the grid and there's a piece of paper underneath. Yours is actually like, it's the same font and it's too big for the paper. Right.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely an exercise in your visual literacy skills, right? We were talking too about, we're getting into the last part of our time together, but like how writing alt text can help you in your own writing, right? And I know for me, it helps me write more concisely about my own work and also about other people's work. So you can use this as an activity, like even if you're like, filling out applications for fellowship or exhibition, what have you. You can use alt text as that starting point Okay, all right. Yes, precise, because when people look at juries, or when I say juries, people who are like selecting artwork or selecting ideas for exhibitions, etc., they're looking for precise language. And also, they're looking for something that's unique, right? But it all starts with first being able to like describe your artwork precise way. All right. So for the next part, what we're going to do is, how's everybody doing? First of all, is this too much? Is this how you feel? You have stamina? Okay. All right. So this is another. There's 4 tasks. I'm going to take you through the 4 tasks. I wish I had some. Use my handout, but I don't. But let's go to the next part. So you can do this in either gallery 1 or gallery 2. And it's 1:30. I did want to leave at least like 5 to 10 minutes at the end for some wrap up. All right. So select an artwork in either gallery and develop a detailed description of the artwork that includes your analysis and interpretation. There's some layers of this. You go to the next slide, please. All right. So you can do, so there's 4 tasks. Okay, task 1, describe. Okay, that's when you do your visual inventory. You can select a different work, or you can select the same one that you have been looking at. All right, so do your visual inventory that is listing everything that you see in the artwork. Okay. And these time limits, these times are just suggestions, okay? But create a paragraph describing the artwork, use rich, specific details, and try to bring the artwork to life in the mind of the reader or the viewer. That's the first task. Second is to look closely. You can set your phone alarm for 5 minutes if you want to time yourself, okay? But look at your selected art image for the entire 5 minutes. While you're looking, you can take notes. So this is similar, this is connected to the first task, okay? So you can kind of do these together if you need to, if you feel, that it's easy enough, feel free to do both task 1 and task 2 together. Some things to notice as you're looking at your artwork are going back to those concepts, those elements of art. Okay. You can look at scale, you can look at the composition of the artwork, whether it's 2D or 3D. You can look at color, tones, balance, etc. You can also consider the medium of the artwork itself. Is it a portrait? Is it a painting? What materials does the artist use to create? If you want, did anyone want to take photos of this? I don't know if that would be helpful for you or not, but yeah. All right, this third thing though is really what I would like for you to do. Is I want you to sketch the artwork. I find this a very useful tool. It doesn't have to be, I tell my students it can be stick figures. I don't really care. It's more about you're looking at the artwork and drawing. Right? So you're looking, it gives you a deeper connection and also a deeper analysis. You notice where things are when you sketch them. So take about 10 minutes to sketch the artwork. Right. And the last one is what you want to do your associations or your interpretation. Okay. So this is basically, again, it can be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be very long. But think about what are the most important visual elements or details of the artwork. Okay. What's another one? Are there any important meanings, messages, or feelings that you get when you look at this artwork? Is there anything that's unexplained or confusing about it? Do you have any questions about the art or the artist's intention? So we can use the remainder, it's like 1:30, I believe. Okay. 1:30. So we have until 2 o'clock, but I wanted to leave like 5 or 10 minutes. So everyone can come back like around like 1:50-ish. And you can so you can stay here or go upstairs. Okay, I'm glad, thank you.
I feel like we have a relationship. I'll text upstairs.
just thinking if I have one already today. I like this. I like this one. Thank you.
usually.
Yeah, I think there's one to skip on that. Right, all come back together. Yeah, so how was this last part for everybody? Kind of basically building upon some of the other things we've done already, and how was sketching? That's what I was at. How was sketching the art?
Relief to sketch instead of like think.
Right, yeah. Yeah, to do, yeah, actually, to do something.
I was thinking of the lottery ticket.
Okay.
Or, you know, saying that the numbers are handwritten, and people like, it's unfair. Sorry, it's looking like a but it never be handwritten, and
Right.
then being sketched myself, it's like, or something makes sense. Why they can write that.
Right.
When I was drunk, well, I really enjoyed it because I know it's enjoyed being in it. Then when I was copying, I think actually I was doing it right, like copying dots. I was like, actually, it's also kind of like something that I got into that whole like, yeah, for like the time commitments,
Right.
I was doing the things that like language and structure. Good. Whole lot of association.
My sketch is horrible, I feel really but but it allowed me, every time I do this exercise, it allowed me to see details I hadn't seen. More details you have, it can lead you to ask other questions about the artwork. And I find that it's helpful too in my own practice. So I guess the final thought is like, think about how doing these exercises might help you in your own work practice. I mentioned earlier how like using alt text can help with develop more concise writing skills, which are really important when you're applying for things. Also, it gives you, writing concisely about your own artwork in the process. It helps organize your thoughts as well. So, does anyone else have any like lasting words or comments about this exercise or workshop? Okay.
Yeah, this was an incredibly challenging series.
Okay.
And I consider myself a verbose person in general. I can describe things in great detail, and for whatever reason, it was particularly.
That good or bad?
I don't know.
Or neither.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Because the things that I make are so much more like obvious in a way. Like I make like small sculptures and stuff. And so the idea of writing an alt text for it is like action figure with spring coming out of it on a marble base.
Right.
Like they're like maybe even a little bit more than that. There's so much like it's just much more easy to like identify the things than like when I'm looking at like figures than this one, which I formed the information.
Right.
There's just it's much harder to do it for someone else's piece. It's much harder to think past like the super obvious to like the something past obvious and descriptive but still objective. Yeah, it's challenge.
Great. Well, if there's thank you all for being here. Yes, and I really appreciate you coming and doing this thing. And stay tuned for our next creative conversations. I think we're still working on what the next topic will be, but we usually like send out a survey to members or incoming some of the fellows or residents in the programs here to get ideas on what to do our creative conversations on next. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you around soon.